The Tainted Glove presents Yumper and Svo at the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Oh, what a big man you are. Hey, let me buy you a pack of gum. I'll show you how to chew it. Ooh.
And Justin Svo Svoboda.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of Yump and Svo at the Show, presented by Tainted Glove. I'm your host, Tom Garcia, a.k.a. Yumper, and my co-host is Justin Svo Svoboda. What's up, Svo?
What's going on, Yump? How are you, man?
Good, man. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Today was a day off and some celebration with my wife for a recent promotion at work. So it's just been a chill day at home. That's
Same.
about it, yeah.
Same for me. Football and chilling with the wife and kid. So as you know, we are big movie nuts. But first, before we get into our movie podcast, we really want to tell you who we are. So with that, I'm going to give you a little introduction to me. I was born on the South Side, grew up a Cubs fan, unfortunately. But born up on the South Side, really, really heavy into movies and sports, played them my whole life. Really watched like movies from since I can remember. Horror movies are always on top of my list. My mom's favorite holiday is Halloween. So every horror movie you can think of, I watched or went through at some point in my life. Really got into the movies even deeper when I was in my teens, going through the classics from The Godfather all the way to now. So I can quote movies all day, trivia about movies. I'm a nerd about that. And music and movies, I'm a big nerd about that. So how I got started with the Tainted Glove. I met K Fidz through another pod he does called Pinwheels and Ivy. We developed a strong relationship there, just going back and forth on Twitter, commenting everybody's posts, stuff like that. It got to the point where we actually exchanged numbers and went to a White Sox game together with White Sox Twitter. And through White Sox Twitter, I met Pete. And through Pete, I met Svo. And that's how I'm on this podcast. What about you, Svo?
Well, White Sox Twitter is a super important part of me. I met a lot of great people on White Sox Twitter, but that's how I became affiliated with Tainted Glove. Is purely through White Sox Twitter. The 108 guys were my introduction to White Sox Twitter, and through that was Pete, Aloha Mr. Hand, and then K-Fidz and I became Twitter mutuals and just started talking about movies. And he introduced me to you, and now basically you and I are like Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Like, did we just become best friends? Yup. But that's how I sort of got started with the Tainted Glove. I grew up not far from where you grew up, or I'm from not far from where you grew up. A little neighborhood sandwiched between Pilsen and Little Village called Heart of Chicago. My dad moved us out to like the western suburbs, very similar to where our friend K-Fidz grew up. And I have been infatuated with movies since I was a kid. I kind of grew up with a single father, and when my dad didn't have someone to watch me, I would watch movies that were completely inappropriate for a 7-year-old. I think one of my first theater experiences was seeing Platoon with my dad when he didn't have a babysitter at 7 years old. I also remember like hanging out in the backseat of my dad's car at the Bel Air Drive-In on Cicero when he wanted to see Jacob's Ladder. Not really super appropriate for a kid that age, but what are you going to do, right? Like, you got to make do with it. But since then, like, my dad always had me watch the movies that were important to him, and The Deer Hunter and The Godfather were movies that I watched growing up. And it continued. Halloween is one of my absolute favorite holidays, kind of like your mom. And the movie Halloween is my favorite. I every year in the month of October, I try to get a Halloween related tattoo on my arm or a movie related tattoo on my arm. So like I have Ghostface, I have Michael Myers, I have The Crow,
Nice.
and I have the Goonies all tattooed on my arm. You can't quite see the Goonies one, but movies have always been a super important part of me. And when I met you, we just clicked about movies. We talk about movies basically all day and quote movies all day through our group chat. Um, and that's sort of how this podcast started. That's the origin of this podcast, is just our pure love for movies.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just all coming together at once and just shooting the breeze in our chat and just develop into this, which is awesome. A giant powder keg. But with that, so we already gave you who we are. Now we're gonna get into a little about our movies choices. So we're gonna start with our top 5 movies. I can kick us off with my number 5. My number 5 happens to be the 1992 version of The Crow. A huge fan of Alex Porras, who's the director. He also directed Dark City in a couple years later. Love the atmosphere of the movie. I think it's probably the best comic adaptation of the movie since followed by the Christopher Nolan Batman movies and then The Watchmen. Uh, Probably one of the best movies I've seen in terms of story, killer soundtrack. Love the atmosphere of the cinematography, how it's shot in the dark. Also, great cast: Ernie Hudson, Brandon Lee. You also have David Patrick Kelly of the Warrior fame. And Tony Todd plays a role in there, which is actually kind of cool because Tony Todd's known for Candyman. So all that messed into one. Also showed the potential of Brandon Lee, unfortunately, when he passed with the gun on set. And now it's kind of funny that it comes full circle because recently we had the same thing happen to Alec Baldwin in his movie Rust this year. What about yours, Fo? What's your number 5?
Well, before I get to my number 5, I want to talk about how I feel about The Crow. And I totally get its warranted spot on your list, right? My first introduction to The Crow was James Barr's graphic novel. My cousin had an autographed copy, and I was infatuated with it. And then I saw the movie. So the movie is super important to me as well. So I totally get where you put it on your list. But if we're going with my number 5 movie, it's funny that you say that. It's kind of hard for me to choose. So I did like a 5A, 5B for me because it obviously you see what I love behind me. But my 5A, 5B is going to be The Dark Knight, Nolan's Dark Knight, or Burton's '89 Batman.
Great
It's
choice.
always hard. It's always hard for me to pick what my favorite version of Batman is, and I think this list, 5A and 5B, is kind of a split on that. Michael Keaton is always going to be my Batman. He's the first Batman that that I associated with. It wasn't Adam West and it wasn't, Val Kilmer. It was always going to be Michael Keaton. Um, we talked about my dad and his love for movies and how it kind of trickled down to me. My dad is not a big person to wait in line. He hates waiting for things. When '89 Batman came out, he waited in line so I could see it for 2 hours at the Hillside Theater right off of 290. And that's the longest I've ever seen him wait in any line. So that movie will always have like a very special, important place to me in terms of where it ranks in the Batman and my favorite movie, like Mount Rushmore, if you will, is the '89 Burton Batman. And then The Dark Knight is just The Dark Knight. Like, it's Nolan's. I don't know. Like, we're gonna get more into directors, and we can say what Christopher Nolan's best movie is, but it's always gonna be his best movie to me. Um, it's perfect from beginning to end. It's not a superhero movie. It's a mobster movie. It's a bank heist movie. It's everything all rolled into one. So number 5 are those 2 Batman movies for me.
You know what? Those are really good choices, especially considering that you picked both movies where people argue who's the best Joker until the most recent Joaquin Phoenix movie, Joker. So Jack versus Heath Ledger was always an argument that me and my friends would have. I'm a big Jack fan. I think Heath Ledger was awesome in the movie. I just think that Jack portrayed it a little bit better towards the comics. And I used to watch Cesar Romero when I was a kid too, so it's kind of like he kind of channeled that a little bit in the '89 Burton. But Heath Ledger, like his acting in Dark Knight was just incredible. He blew it out of the water, made it more serious, and yes, Nolan is a freaking star. Like he's awesome. We can get into Nolan in a little bit. So for my number 4, I'm going with the movie Rounders. movie that starred No Limit Hold'em poker craze with Matt Damon and Edward Norton, John Turturro, Martin Landau, and the great John Malkovich represent Chicago.
Pay that man his monies.
Yes, so many great quotes from John Malkovich. Great story. I don't know if you heard the one where Matt Damon said that they were waiting for Malkovich to come in to play his character Teddy KGB, and everybody was like in the set was like, "Oh, Malkovich is coming! Malkovich is coming!" And Matt Damon's like, "Yeah." So Malkovich comes and he sits down, and his line's supposed to be, "If you don't give me my money, then you're mine." And so Malkovich is sitting there, and Matt Damon gives his line, and Malkovich goes, "Well, if you don't give me my money, you're mine." And Matt Damon's just like, "What the hell?" And he's looking at Malkovich, and Malkovich is like, no sell, just sitting there. And all the whole everybody, the crew, everybody's like, "Oh, that's awesome. That's great." And he said Malkovich leaned into him and was like, "I'm a horrible actor." So, yeah, just, I love that movie. It really did pump out the poker craze of, like, the leading into the 2000s. Damon and, Norton actually played in the World Series of Poker main event that was paid for by Miramax, and then that actually transitioned to more people playing, and then eventually we got the Chris Moneymaker, craze in 2003 that actually boosted it out. I just love the movie. It's like a little, like, basically a poker for dummies explained by Matt Damon as a narrator. It's such a and it also goes into a deep dive of the poker underground, which I really liked as well. And Edward Norton's a great character actor. What about you? What's your number 4?
I don't think you're wrong on that at all.
Mhm.
Rounder, I am not a poker guy. I have never been into playing poker. I don't even know if I know how to play poker properly. But Rounders from beginning to end and Worm's character, like I was infatuated the minute I saw Rounders and Malkovich like as Teddy KGB and John Turturro, like
Yeah.
like just grinding it out, talking about
Mhm.
that and about putting it all on the table. Um, Rounders was perfect. Rounders was it captured like this weird moment in time, like in such a perfect way. And it also was in the middle of this string of just Ed Norton, like cult classic movie after another.
Definitely.
Like he did Rounders and he did American History X and he did Fight Club and he did what else am I missing here? But like
I think he did Primal Fear before Rounders, if I'm not
well,
mistaken.
Primal Fear was his first like role, like his
Mhm.
first movie role. And that movie messed me up. Like
It's a
Primal
great
Fear
movie.
messed me up. Um I love that you chose Rounders at number 4. My number 4 is a little bit more lighthearted.
Mhm.
Um and it's kind of another like time and place thing, but the original American Pie movie is absolutely top 5 favorite movies for me of all time. I remember seeing the trailer and I'm like, I'm never gonna be able to see that because my friends' parents are never gonna let them go see that. And we got tickets to go see it opening night at I want to say Marcus Addison on Lake Street. Like two nights before actually the movie came out to the general public. Um, and that movie was awesome. Like American Pie to this day, it reminds me of the summer when the movie came out and like hanging out with your friends during the day and going to the movies at night. American Pie movie just screams summer with your friends to me, and I love everything about it. It's funny. It hits all the right notes in terms of like kind of what teenagers are thinking about and going through. And to me, it just encapsulates the perfect comedy that we'll touch upon in episodes that are coming up.
Totally agree. Actually, that was one of the first R-rated movies I saw in theater, and I actually went with my best friend at the time, and his older sisters took us. So that was actually, like, just crazy. We just went when we saw it, just the whole thing with the pie, Eugene Levy was hilarious. I'm pretty sure every young adolescent teen, the crush on Shannon Elizabeth. Just a great movie, and the fact that, Henry Rowan Gardner's in that movie made me laugh as well.
Yeah, who knew? Like I thought for sure that when he was in a movie called, I want to say, what was it? A Night in King Arthur's
A
Court.
Kid in King Arthur's Court or something like that. Kid
A
in King
Kid in
Arthur's
King
Court.
Arthur's Court, and it was after he did Rookie of the Year, and then you didn't hear from him for like 10 years until this American Pie movie came out, and I was like, oh my god, it's him, and that was cool. That was cool. I love that movie to this day.
Yeah, it set off Jason Biggs' career. I mean, that's what he's really known for. He actually makes a joke about it in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where he's like,
I'm always going to be known as the pie fucker.
yeah. Can't you say, hey, you're a loser? Or hey, we loved you and guys and girls. No, it's the fucking pie.
It's the pie.
Yeah. Such a great movie. So moving on to my number 3, I went with a classic. I went with Rocky by Sylvester Stallone. The movie was based off the Chuck Wemper Ali fight. Just love it for the fact that it actually pushes the underdog. The whole story, I think, was written very beautifully by Sylvester Stallone, especially considering that I know the backstory of how he was living in his car, barely had enough money to do anything, and actually was holding out so he can play the lead role because that story meant so much to him. And it has a great cast with Talia Shire from The Godfather fame, Burt Young, Burgess Meredith, who comes full circle. He was the Penguin in
It
Batman.
was yeah, absolutely.
Another great character actor for Twilight Zone. It's just to me, it was a classic movie. The soundtrack is still get played today when you run up steps. The Gonna Fly Now. Brought a lot of fame to Philadelphia, made Sylvester Stallone a superstar, and it actually showed that he had acting chops. I know he's known for action, but Sylvester Stallone actually is a very good trained actor. Um, so yeah, Rocky would always be one of my favorites.
Yeah, and any movie on this list is
Mhm.
going to hit notes like with the right people. And you're right, like that movie is still to this day holds up. You root for the underdog. You see the way he trains, and like the iconic lines from people like Burgess Meredith, like you're gonna eat lightning and crap thunder. Like yeah, Rocky deserves to be on that list. Absolutely. Um, for my number 3 choice, I went with a movie that just recently released the 5th installment in its franchise, and that's Scream.
Oh, nice.
1996. Wes Craven kind of knew that like slasher and horror movies were becoming, I don't know, a joke. Like they were a joke and they were predictable. And this movie just fucked shit up. Like it was just a way for it to reintroduce a serial killer, and it cast all the right people. Like Courtney Cox was great in it. David Arquette, Nev Campbell was only in like Party of Five before that, and um, it really like that movie still like we talked when the new Scream came out. Like I went opening night like before Friday. I went Thursday night to see it, and it's just a good horror movie that still holds up. It's not like going back and watching, Friday the 13th Part 3 or Part 4 or Jason Takes Manhattan. I just totally ripped on the Friday the 13th franchise, and I love the Friday the 13th franchise. Um, but those were the only movies I chose to pick on. But like it holds up and it's good and it's fun, and the new Scream movie sort of pumps some oxygen in there into this franchise, and the kills are more brutal. And I'm excited to see where this franchise goes if it continues to keep on.
Yeah, I haven't seen New Scream yet. Looking forward to seeing it, but exactly what you said about Wes Craven and slasher films. The man brought us Nightmare on Elm Street, and then like he even before Scream came out, he was actually messing around with the idea of a new type of slasher film when he released New Nightmare, which is another great movie. Uh, Wes Craven adds so much stuff to the horror genre. Great director. Scream was just all the movie cliches all in one. Great characters. And I actually found something out interesting just reading about Scream because I do read about movies because I'm a nerd like that. Um, that Drew Barrymore was actually supposed to play Nev Campbell's part, and
Yeah,
she couldn't something with scheduling, so she had it. So she wanted to be in the movie still, so she actually played the small role she did in the beginning, just to uh, um help out Wes because Wes still wanted her and she still wanted to be in the movie. So I thought that was very interesting that she actually was originally supposed to play Neve Campbell's part, which is pretty crazy.
She was fantastic.
Mhm.
Like that opening scene created a template for horror movies for like the next 10 years, where like
Mm.
before you even get the credits, the action is pumping and going, and like boom, it hits you in the face, and then full stop credits,
Yeah,
like
that's another thing too.
intro.
And he throws homage to Psycho. Kills off one of the biggest
He
stars at the time.
he absolutely does. Like, and I know that we're gonna talk more about directors, but like the man has such a celebrated catalog. Like, I love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but like Scream and, surprisingly, The People Under the Stairs
That's
is
another good
one of
movie
my
too.
absolute favorite Wes Craven movies. It's hilarious. Brandon Adams from the Mighty Ducks is in it, but
Yeah,
we're getting off
Jesse.
topic. But yeah,
That's just usually the way movie talk goes. It goes from one thing to another. It's like a rabbit hole.
it
But
is.
let's go into my number two. My number two is probably a movie that I have watched at least 100 times, maybe more. And that movie is Big Trouble in Little China. I am a huge Jack Burton fan. If you don't know who Jack Burton is, you gotta look him up. Great character by Kurt Russell, directed by the great John Carpenter. It's a story that includes fantasy, action, horror, everything you want, you got it. Comedy. Uh, a young Kim Cattrall's in the movie. Victor Wong from Tremors and from uh, Three Ninjas is in it. It's just awesome. And just Kirk Russell's larger than life personality as Jack Burton is just perfect. Like, it's so hilarious, and just his monologues, like his monologue in the Pork Chop Express. "Have you paid your bills, Jack?" "Yeah, checks in the mail." That's just like just little thing, and it's him talking to himself over his radio. So just like that whole thing, like, made me fall in love with it. It's just something I continuously watch. Like, my wife has watched it with me, and now she's like, "Oh, this is your favorite movie." I'm like, "It's one of them." So it's something that I love.
There are two movies that made me absolutely love Kurt Russell: Big Trouble in Little China and Overboard. Um, I don't know why, but I love Over. No, I do know why, because it was on WGN all the time, late at night, and when I was hanging out at my grandmother's house and there was no cable, there was a movie to watch, and my grandmother
Mm.
liked it, and she would stay up till 2, and we would watch Overboard. But no, Kurt Russell is fantastic. I love him. Uh, I think that movie is amazing. I love almost anything John Carpenter does, with the exception of Ghost on Mars.
Actually, I like Ghost of Mars. That's like another
It's
really my hit.
terrible.
I
It's terrible.
That's what do you call it?
A
Non-public,
guilty pleasure.
yeah, guilty pleasure. Yeah, I like that movie.
No, like
Mhm,
Big Trouble in Little China fits in there perfectly. I love it.
mhm.
I love it. For my number two movie is also a movie that I have seen probably 150 times, and I debated putting it at number one, but my number one movie is always going to be what it is. But number two is Goodfellas.
Classic.
I can watch Goodfellas at any time of the day. If it's on TV, even if it's edited, I can sit down and pick it up from any point of the movie. Um, it spawned so many things. Like, people, like, you don't realize like that. Michael Imperioli was in the movie, and um,
Vin
whatever his real name is, Paulie Walnuts is in the movie.
Vincent
Um,
Pastore.
Vincent Pastore is in the movie. It brought so many things, and the scene at the Copa, where they're walking in to see the show, and it's all one continuous shot. Just like Martin Scorsese is a genius, and the movie is so quotable. Like, I quote the movie with my dad probably 3 or 4 times a week. Goodfellas is always going to be there, and I seriously debated at putting it number one, but I didn't.
Yeah, Goodfellas is one of those movies that, one of the old gangster flicks that, like, made the mold of what a gangster flick should be. P besides it was an updated version, I think, of, like, The Godfather. We had The Godfather 1 and 2, and then we had, Sergio Leone's, Once Upon a Time in America,
Once Upon a Time in America.
which is another, but then when Scorsese came out with Goodfellas, it was just a whole 'nother spin on how a mob story should be told. I really liked the music in the movie, believe it or not. Like, I used to listen to a lot of oldies with my grandfather, and even my mom and grandmother. Like that's something that's like holding near and dear. Like I know all those songs, the voiceover, the continuous shots, and like you said, there's a lot of characters in there that actually like spawned off into other great things like Vincent Pastore and Michael Imperiale, Tony Sirico. They were all famous in The Sopranos later on. Uh, it's just a great movie.
Well, and it's also very, very true to Nicholas Pileggi's book, Wise
Mhm.
Guys. Like it's very. I remember like I was supposed to read something in school, and they were like, "Well, what book do you want to read?" And I just found it, and I'm like, "Wait, this is what Goodfellas is based on." So I got away with doing that when I had just seen the movie, and it was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, actually, sidebar, like Michael Franchise, has his own YouTube, and he actually debunks a lot of what, Henry has said in there, but he's actually in the movie as well. He's, Michael Franchese, I think you call him or something like that in the movie.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's just interesting.
Did you know that it's not a direct sequel, but My Blue Heaven is actually
Yes, with Steve Martin,
a loosely based sequel to Goodfellas.
another great
When
movie.
Henry Hill went into the witness protection program,
Yeah, with Rick Moranis, that's another great movie, My Blue Heaven.
it's so good.
So with my number 1, this movie actually is kind of an emotional pick for me. Uh, growing up, my abuelo used to watch a lot of westerns. He was always into westerns. It was his thing. We used to watch Gunsmoke, Rifleman, Bonanza, and like he used to watch me before I went to kindergarten, and then while I was in kindergarten, when I would come home from school, he would watch me with my grandmother, and that's all we would watch. Like I knew at that time, he would say, "Hey, come sit with me." I sit on his lap, and we would watch these westerns. He loved them. All the spaghetti westerns, The Man with No Name, that was his thing. So when I got older, I started watching them over because he passed when I was pretty young. I started watching them again and really fell in love with the spaghetti westerns, really fell in love with The Man with No Name. And when Unforgiven came out, I was still like young. It came out in 92. I was like 7. I wanted to see it because my grandfather had passed a couple years before. My mom's like, it's too violent for you. You can't see it yet. But my dad let me watch it when it came out to rental. Fell in love with the movie. Uh, I think it's a perfect ending to the Man with No Name character. I think it was a perfect ending to Clint Eastwood's spaghetti western era, as that's the last western he appeared in. I think it's a great job with Gene Hackman. It shows it's like a beginning and an end. The story was great. I love the fact that they don't have narration; they just have the old school read the lines on the screen to tell you about the story. I love Morgan Freeman's in it. I all around I just love that movie. So that's why it's my number 1.
Um, I wasn't expecting you to go with Unforgiven as your number one. I never would have pegged that. That's pretty funny. I also grew up with all those Western movies. True Grit and Rooster Cogburn, and I remember when Unforgiven. I think it won Best Picture in '92, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but I never would have pegged you for a Western guy, so that's kind of cool. Like you learn something new every day.
Yeah, I just it's so good. I don't know if it won Best Picture. I know it for sure, Gene Hackman won for, playing Little Bill. That was, like, his 2nd Oscar, after, Popeye Doyle and The French Connection. Yeah,
Let's
it's
take a
just a
look.
classic movie for me. I'm looking it up as we
Yep.
speak.
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Film Editing, and then Clint Eastwood was nominated for Best Actor, but he didn't win.
Yeah, he lost who'd he lose to that year? It had to be somebody big. Uh,
93 would have been Tom
was that
Hanks in Philadelphia,
or did he lose was that the year Son of a Woman came out?
I don't know. Let's see if it pops
The
up.
Oscars? Alright, if you're listening to this, it's just something we do. We have to look and see who, oh, he lost to, Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the
Silence of the
Lambs.
Lambs.
Yeah.
Ah, that makes sense. And then Philadelphia would have been the next year, and then Forrest Gump would have been the following year, and then Tom
Mhm,
Hanks was nominated again for a third year for Apollo 13, but he didn't
mhm.
win.
What a great movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ron Howard, like, yeah, that movie killed it. So,
Yeah, great, another great director. Okay, so let's go into your number 1.
Yeah, so my favorite movie, my number one movie of all time, is the 1984 version of The Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio. It's always been my favorite movie ever since I was a little kid. Um, it's kind of like this weird thing that everybody relates to. Everybody relates to like um, going to a new school and having to make friends and being the outcast. And it was just, to me, it's like the iconic 80s teen movie, right? Like, um, some people would say The Breakfast Club, some people would say like 16 Candles. And we're gonna do a deep dive on those in future pods. But to me, it's like it, it says everything that it needs to say, and this kid overcomes adversity. And funny story, I was at the last show of the My Chemical Romance Black Parade tour in,
Mhm.
oh god, I don't even remember what year it was, but it was Rise Against, and it was Billy Talent, and it was My Chemical Romance, and this was at not the Concord, the Congress Theater, before it closed down. And I wore my Karate Kid headband to the show, right?
Yeah.
I was just a goofy teenage nerd that wore my Karate Kid headband to a My Chem show because I love My Chemical Romance. And the lights went out for My Chem to take the stage, and they took the stage to Joe Esposito's "You're the Best Around" from
Awesome.
the Karate Kid. Now, I didn't put two and two together until after the movie, but all the dudes in My Chemical Romance are five goofy teenagers from New Jersey, just like Daniel LaRusso. And they took the stage to this song, and I'm up against the barricade, right? And I have my headband on. And Gerard Way sees that I have this headband on. He points out to me, he's like, "How did you know?" And I had no idea. I just wore it because I was a nerd, and The Karate Kid's my favorite movie. And he asked me if he could have it. And
Awesome, dude.
I'm like, yeah. And he wore this Karate Kid headband for the whole show. And he goes over to his stage manager and he's like, "Get those guys out of there." And he put me and my friend Angie um on like the merch list for after the show. And he let us go through and pick whatever merchandise we wanted in exchange for this Karate Kid headband. And they signed my copy of Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, all because I had this goofy Karate Kid headband on. But it's always going to be my favorite movie. I have been to many Comic Cons, Wizard Worlds, and have paid the extra dough to meet Ralph Macchio. I haven't met William Zabaka yet, but that is always the goal. In fact, there's a whole wall in my basement that's just dedicated to the Karate Kid. It's my favorite movie of all time. It always will be.
Yeah, Karate Kid was, I would say, it was like one of the movie that I used to watch a lot. I mean, it's getting a ton of recognition now because of the success of Cobra Kai. It's kind of funny you're a huge fan of Ralph Macchio. There's another follow on Twitter, Thomas J. Beebs. He's a huge fan of William Zabka, and he hates Ralph Macchio in that movie.
It's the whole How I Met Your Mother
Yeah.
like goofy storyline. How William Zabaka is actually the hero in the movie,
Uh-huh.
and Ralph Macchio is the bully.
And Cobra Kai plays it to perfection with the
Yeah,
story of Johnny's side. And if you haven't seen Cobra Kai, you're missing out. It's totally a binge. My wife actually got into it and binged it in 2 days. The William Zabka is just awesome. He should have gotten an Emmy award for the way he plays Johnny.
I agree. It's goofy and it's over the top, and it's like there's a couple of scenes in Cobra Kai where Ralph Macchio's wife is like, "Are we really having a war over karate in the 2000s?" And it's like it's so cheesy and the premise is goofy, but it just works. It
Well,
works, but
they poked fun at themselves in it. Like that's the best part. Like they literally poke fun at themselves, and that's what makes it such a great show.
yeah, it's if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend The Karate Kid. But that will always be my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, that's a great movie. I really hated the remake. I'm not nothing against Jaden Smith. And it was Jackie Chan who I love, but it was kung fu, not karate that he taught him.
It was a cash grab. Like
Yeah, I
it
didn't
was
like it.
it was the same thing that Cobra Kai does, like trying to hit on that sense of nostalgia, but done in a really shitty way.
There's also a really funny Funny or Die short with Ralph Macchio, and it's basically makes fun of him and his nice guy personality. It's called Wax On, Fuck Off. If you can see it on YouTube, it is great. I would highly advise checking it out. It's like 2 minutes, but it makes fun of his nice guy personality and how he's basically unsellable to Hollywood because he's too nice.
Well, and there's
And
a whole episode of Entourage dedicated to that. I think it's called Aqua Mansion, where they go to the Playboy Mansion, and Johnny Drama's not allowed in there because he got drunk one night and he freed the monkeys from the zoo. And Johnny Drama swears it was Ralph Macchio. And Ralph Macchio's like, it wasn't me, and I'm not going to fess up to it. Well, it turns out it was Pauly Shore that was drinking and getting drunk with them, that he freed the monkeys. And they got to the end of it, and they kicked Pauly Shore out of the mansion, and Drama and Ralph Macchio partied at like one of Hugh Hefner's parties before Vincent Chase signed on to play Aquaman.
that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, Entourage is another great show I liked. Jeremy Piven was hilarious.
It's my favorite show of all time.
Yeah, that's another good show. All right, so we transition into our top 5. Let's transition now into our favorite director. So, Swole, how about you start us off with this one?
I can definitely start it off, and it was a hard choice for me. There's 2 directors that stand out in my mind when I think about movies that I love of theirs, and it came down to 2. It came down to David Fincher, and it came down to Martin Scorsese. And I had to go with Martin Scorsese because I look at his whole body of work and the things that he's influenced, and the movies that he's made that I love to this day. Like we talked about Goodfellas and Casino, The Irishman. I saw The Irishman in the theater 3 times. The movie's 3 hours long, so I spent 9 hours of my life just going to see this movie in the theater. Not to mention, I don't put these in his upper echelon of movies, but movies like The Departed or Shutter Island, Gangs of New York. Gangs of New York is a damn near perfect movie. If Cameron Diaz wasn't in it, it would have been a perfect movie because she cannot act at all.
She's from The Mask, man.
She is from The Mask. And I think she's married to one of the dudes in Good Charlotte now.
Oh, maybe. I'm not too sure.
I'm pretty sure she's married to Benji from Good Charlotte.
Probably.
And I will share a Good Charlotte story with you off the air, though.
Okay.
But yes, like just Martin Scorsese just gets it. I'm super excited to see what he has in the pipeworks. Did I read this right that he's doing the Jerry Garcia Grateful Dead biopic?
I think he is.
Jonah Hill.
That's where we're going around. I think he is kind of under the wraps developing something. I know for a fact he's doing The Devil in the White City.
I know he's doing that too.
It's supposed to be a movie. Now it's going to be a TV series starring Leo.
Yeah.
So that's going to be real interesting to see.
Like a Netflix limited series or a HBO Max limited series or something like that. Like the guy just gets it. And all these other movies that have been clearly influenced by him, like I'm a Batman nerd. I love Batman stuff. The Joker is clearly, or it could have been, a Martin Scorsese movie.
Definitely.
It reeks of Taxi Driver all over the Joker. Yeah. What do you think?
Totally agree. The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix is a total retelling of Taxi Driver, just with supervillains. Great movie. And Martin Scorsese, I mean, he's the godfather of, no pun intended, directing. He's like the high standard. I think he's awesome, but I personally had 2 favorites that was kind of my 1A and 1B. And you mentioned one of them already. One of my 1B is David Fincher. From a guy who came from basically doing music videos. He started with music videos in the 90s, and I think he did some in the 80s, to going to doing Seven, which Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman have quoted saying it is a perfect movie. To go into doing that, is just
they're
like,
not wrong. Seven is a perfect movie.
just the way he tells his storytelling. He does extensive research on his casting, so he's always finding the perfect person to play that perfect role. And it even shows in his TV series when he did Mindhunter on Netflix. He
Mindhunter.
has a great cast in there that he handpicked. He's just phenomenal. I really like David Fincher. I think he's like a diamond in the rough. So he's my 1B.
So he was mine too, and I think like what people don't realize is the streak that this dude went on, like Seven, Fight Club, Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Panic Room, Social Network, like the dude just writes good movies, and then he made that Citizen Kane Orson Welles movie, that was on Netflix. What was that called? Mank.
Mank, yeah, Mank just came out.
Like yeah, like he gets it. He's awesome. And like my first introduction to him was probably the movie, maybe not now, but Alien 3.
Another that was another spin on the Aliens series. Like it's just
Yeah.
like his as I say, his repertoire or his range is so extensive because like I said, he started off with music videos. Alien 3 is considered a sci-fi horror, and then
Yep.
you go into a thriller with Seven, and then you go on to Case of Benjamin Button. I guess that'd be supernatural, like a
I don't know
supernatural
what you would
fantasy.
consider that.
Well, it's a
I
romance movie, so I mean, he's all over the place.
Do you remember the first time you saw Seven?
Yes, I do. I I didn't see that one in theater. I actually saw it for rental. But I do have a funny story about Seven. So me and my buddy in college, uh, we were huge fans of Seven. So everybody wanted to go out to the bar at night, and we're like, you know what? We're just gonna stay in our dorm. So our dorm rooms had pretty big dorm rooms. So he's like, you know what? I'll get a case of beer, we'll order some food, and we'll watch Seven. I'm like, cool. We were drinking so much. He bought like this case of Polish beer that had like 48 bottles. We drank so much. We watched Seven 3 times. We would talk in between and we would look up and it would be on the same scene that we thought we saw like a half an hour earlier. So we watched it 3 times and like that's how much I love that movie. We just kept, and then once it got done, then we went to sleep. We passed out drunk. But yeah, Seven is, I love that movie so much.
It's a damn near perfect movie. I agree. I also saw it. I didn't see it in the theater because there was no way that when that
Mhm.
movie came out that I was going to be able to get into that movie. But I saw it in rental. My buddy that I grew up with, I've known him since like second grade.
Mhm.
He had a neighbor that would go to Blockbuster every week and rent every single new release and then record them. And in her basement was just this wall of VHS tapes with like every movie where it had to be cataloged. And she was recording Seven, and I was like, "Can we watch it while you record it?" She's like, "Yeah." Like your parents aren't gonna say anything. I'm like, "No, they don't
Mhm.
care." Um, and I watched Seven, and I was like, that movie messed me up. Like messed me up.
So just like another like backstory on that movie like pushed me into pursuing my career in criminal justice psychology. That's my
Criminal
first.
Justice. What were you studying to be Batman?
Yes.
What movie? What movie is that from?
Oh no, I don't know. Give me it.
That's from the end of Clerks 2. Like
Oh my god.
you were studying criminal justice. What were you trying to be, Batman?
I should have got that one. I haven't watched that like not too long ago. But yeah, that movie kind of like made me want to go into psychiatric profiling. Of course, my career took a different turn, but I mean, that was something that really inspired me to do so, and that's what movies do. But to get to my number one, you already mentioned him as well, Christopher Nolan. I think Christopher Nolan probably is the best director out there today. Of course, Scorsese is the standard, and I think Nolan is right there with him. Christopher Nolan's stories and his movies are realistic. His characters are believable. His storytelling and cinematography are beautiful. Memento, going to the Batman series, going to Tenet, all those movies are great. Christopher Nolan to me is this like the top of the list. Every movie he puts out, I try to watch. Dunkirk, like I don't get there's I don't think he produces any bad movies personally, and that's kind of hard to say about anybody because everybody has a stinker in there. I think Christopher Nolan is so good at what he does. Everything's either above that echelon of being bad. It's always something good that you're interested in, and I fell in love with everything he does.
So you had me 100% till you said Tenet.
Hmm.
I love 95% of Christopher Nolan's work. One of my favorite movies, it would probably be in the top 10, is Inception. Dunkirk was fantastic. Um, my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, besides the Batman movie, is The Prestige.
Hugh Jackman, great movie.
But Tenet did not do it for me at all. But I agree with you. Everyone makes a stinker like every now and then. In my opinion, that is the only misstep that I've seen so far from Christopher Nolan. He's a genius.
Yeah, I understand the Tenet. Like a lot of people didn't like it. I think it wasn't his best, but it's still Nolan-esque. Like it's not a horrible movie. Like
You could tell it's a Nolan movie. You
yeah.
absolutely can tell it's a Nolan movie, and it's not horrible by any means.
And I just love the fact too, like the realism he uses. Like just going off the Batman series, every villain from the comics was chosen by him because he wanted the villain to be a person that could exist in our society in real life.
Oh yeah, and there was no way that none of it was campy and none of it was corny. Like it could be someone that is just crazy and a serial killer, or and that's why I'm super excited to see Paul Dano's version of the Riddler in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so a lot of people are hating on the way he looks though.
I
But
don't care. I don't care. Like it's gonna be good. The Funko Pop for the Riddler is pretty crappy, but like I think in the movie it's gonna translate really well.
Funko Pops, man, I've been getting into those a lot. But until we go into our next questions, let's take a quick break and we'll be back in 30 seconds.
You're listening to the Yumper and Svo at the Show podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Yumper and Svo, on Instagram at Yumper and Svo, and like and subscribe on YouTube at the Tainted Glove.
All right, welcome back. So we're going to go into our favorite movie soundtracks now. So we went from our favorite movies to our favorite director, and now let's get into the musical movies, guys. They add so much to it. So I'll start us off with my favorite one. I gave it in my number 5. It's actually the soundtrack of The Crow. Really love this soundtrack for the fact that it has so many great alternative bands, including The Cure, who sings the lead song Burn. Great tune. It's actually very ionic in the movie when Brandon Lee is actually putting on the Crow face of the makeup and this song is played over it. Just
The
so
window
much,
over his
yeah.
old apartment.
Yeah, it's just so much added to it. I love it. It also has Stone Temple Pilots on there.
Do you know what my favorite track?
Rams.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm
No,
sorry.
go ahead.
Do you know
Go ahead.
what my favorite track on that soundtrack is?
What?
Is Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails covering Dead Souls by Joy Division.
Yes, I was about to get to that. So that part of the movie is also awesome because he's actually running on the rooftops when that song's playing, and the Crow
Yeah.
following Tintin. You actually this is me about to be nerd out. You actually see what the Crow is seeing through his eyes. So you see him following Tintin. You see Brandon Lee or Eric Draven running on the rooftops, and it culminates with him falling into the garbage pile and doing the laugh. So yeah, the soundtrack to me is like it's awesome. I use it when I work out. I can listen to it at any time. Also, not to mention another great song on there by what was it? Gotham City Blues, I think it's called the song. It's by the Machines of Loving Grace. It's actually the part where Brandon Lee actually enters Fun Boy's apartment and they have the guitar riff and he goes underneath the light bulb, which I iconic like look of him like looking up at the light bulb that people have taken. I've seen people have tattooed of it. So yeah, The Crow was actually something that really, really like stuck with me, and I still listen to it to this day.
It's a great soundtrack, and the movie means a lot to me as well. Like I said, I tattooed, it can't rain all the time, on me. It's just the soundtrack is fantastic. Nine Inch Nails, what is it? Big Empty, from Stone Temple Pilots, The Cure. It's an iconic soundtrack, and the movie is a cult classic, but it shouldn't be a cult classic. It should have been a mainstream massive success and the start of a massive career for Brandon Lee, and we never got it. Like we never got it.
Yeah, it's so sad because his greatest success happened when he passed. He was like already signed up to be in Mortal Kombat, to be Johnny Cage, There was actually talk about making a possible sequel to The Crow with him starring. He was
Instead,
like,
we got City of Angels.
Mhm. That movie's not horrible. I did a review on The Crow, like in my YouTube, Lil Yumper on YouTube. I did a in-depth interview, like a review of it. I go through how Brandon Lee passed away, everything that happened with that. And I say like the other Crow movies don't hold to standard. Nothing really holds up to the original movie. I think like there's very rare movies that do that. Scream had a great arc throughout its whole series, and we found out they actually had it mapped out, which is the way it should be. Like City of Angels is okay. I don't think it was great. It was okay. It had Iggy Pop in it, and Mary Pop.
Yeah, and Kirsten Dunst, right?
I don't think it had Kirsten
Or was that
Dunst in it.
part 3? Because there was a part 3 as well.
That I think that's one with is that the one with Edward Furlong? No, that movie sucked. If it's with Edward Furlong,
That was awful. Yeah.
yeah. The other ones after that, the second one was okay.
Okay.
But what's your favorite soundtrack?
So my favorite soundtrack is from the 1998 movie Can't Hardly Wait with Jennifer Love Hewitt and Ethan Embry, Seth Green, and I believe that's Lauren Ambrose from 6 Feet Under. And what's his name? Charlie. I forget what his name was, but he was in Hook.
Yeah, I think Can't Hardly Wait was his last movie, right?
It might have been. But the soundtrack is great because one, the title track from Paul Westerberg and the Replacements, Can't Hardly Wait, is really, really good. You have Run DMC, you have Busta Rhymes. You have a really good song from an album that means a lot to me. The Third Eye Blind self-titled album. You have Graduate from Third Eye Blind. But you also have the best pop punk song ever written by my favorite group in the whole world, Blink-182, and Damn It is playing when the cops show up at the house and they have to leave, and it's the end of the party, and well, I guess This Is Growing Up is playing in the background, and to me, it's the perfect soundtrack. It kind of encapsulates the whole movie really well, and it's got Guns N' Roses on there. So,
Paradise City, man.
Paradise City. That's my favorite movie soundtrack of all time.
Yeah, that's a good one. Can't Hardly Wait was a good, like, one of those movies that like stuck out to me too in the 90s. Like Jennifer Love Hewitt, everybody loved her.
How can you not? She was so nice in this movie. She's easy on the eyes. Yeah.
And of course you had what was his name? What's his character's name in the show, the movie? Seth's character. What was his name?
Oh, Seth Green's character.
Yeah. Nicky or Dicky or something like that.
I forgot. I'm sorry. I was checking out the end of the Chiefs and Bills game. The Chiefs just kicked a field goal to send it to overtime.
Ooh, I hope Patrick Mahomes lose.
36-36. The Bills were up, and Pat Mahomes drove down to get the field goal. Wow. Sorry.
No, it's really good.
If you didn't know, we love sports as much as we love movies. It was another unifier for us to becoming friends. Movies was just what we wanted to talk about.
Definitely.
God, what was Seth Green's character? Why y'all gotta waste my flavor? Damn. That was one of his lines in the movie.
They also had Sherman from American Pie in there. He stole everything in there, didn't he?
All he does is steal stuff the whole movie. Yeah. Like even the last scene in the movie at the diner, he steals the gumball machine.
Yeah, that movie is like epic.
It's fantastic. It's my generation's version of The Breakfast Club or 16 Candles. And Deborah Kaplan and Harry Elfont made it, and then they went on. They haven't done a lot, but their follow-up to Can't Hardly Wait was a live-action version of Josie and the Pussycats.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Which also has a fantastic soundtrack, but it's kind of a terrible movie.
Yeah, I'm looking at Deborah Kaplan's filmography as a writer, and she did Leap Year, American Judy, like nothing after Josie and the Pussycats. Oh, she did the Flintstones and Viva Rock Vegas.
Hey, that's a classic.
Yeah, his name was Kenny Fisher. That was his name.
Kenny. And he Lord Ambrose character leaked out to the school that he was a dendrophiliac. And he's like, what's a dendrophiliac? And she's like, someone that has sex with trees.
Yeah, and it also had Melissa Joan Hart as the crazy yearbook girl.
The yearbook girl. Like,
Yeah.
these are memories captured in time, people. You don't just throw them away.
Oh, and Freddie Rodriguez is in this movie. Like, there's so many
Freddie
people that are
Rodriguez
like,
is in this movie. Melissa Joan Hart. Funny story about Melissa Joan Hart. She came to my middle school in 8th grade to talk to us about not getting hepatitis C. Like, it was a real thing. They brought us all into the gym, and she spoke to all of us about not getting hepatitis C at Canton Middle School, Streamwood, Illinois, in 1998.
My brother used to watch Clarissa Explains It All the time.
Who didn't watch Clarissa Explains It All?
Great show.
Oh, man. Soundtracks are fun.
Definitely. So another one that I was kind of like iffy on throwing on there was I played instruments in high school. I listened to a lot of classical music to when I study or when I when I work, and I really was in love with the Last Samurai soundtrack by Hans Zimmer.
Oh, okay.
I really loved his arrangements, the way he kept kind of tone in the movie and his music, as well as the time that it's placed in. So that wasn't like that. I was kind of between the Crow and that because I do listen to them both a lot, but I had to go with the Crow because the Crow's got lyrics in it.
Can I tell you? I don't think I've ever seen The Last Samurai.
I would if I were you. People think the bad thing about The Last Samurai is people think it's about Tom Cruise being the Last Samurai, and it isn't about him being the Last Samurai. You have to watch the movie.
I'll give it a whirl.
Yeah, it's been it has been like praised for the fact that the writers of the movie have stuck to the time period. They even went as far as making sure that the right dialogue of Japanese is spoken in the movie to reflect upon the time. They try to make it as historically accurate, except one part, but that was more for the movie effect. But it's a pretty good movie, and Ken Watanabe actually got nominated for an Oscar for that movie.
Oh, my favorite character in Inception, actually.
Yeah, Ken Watanabe, another great actor. And then he went on to go with Godzilla. He was in Godzilla as well.
Which Godzilla? Like the newer Godzilla or the Matthew Broderick?
No,
not like. I know
that's a lot of fish. That's a lot of fish.
I cracked open another beer too. If you guys are okay with that. Tonight I'm drinking Pipeworks All That Doom Jazz. It's pretty good. Sorry, I'm not my iPad camera isn't tracking, so I am enjoying some beers while we do this, and an homage to our podcast influencers, from the 108 Boys. So cheers to those guys.
Cheers to them. I am being a nerd. I'm drinking water tonight.
No, that's okay. Most people have to go to work tomorrow, but I work a retail schedule. So tomorrow I'm going to play NHL 22 in my underwear and eat pizza rolls. So
living the dream, so living the dream. Okay. So now that you know our favorite movie soundtracks, what about our favorite posters?
Ooh.
So you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So my favorite movie poster of all time is the 1978 John Carpenter classic Halloween, with the pumpkin and the knife and the night he came home. Not only is it like top 10 favorite movies of all time for me, but the movie poster is iconic. My dad showed me this movie when I was way too young. I still can't come up from the basement by myself without making sure a light is on. I go see every Halloween movie the night it comes out, even Halloween Kills. I know how you felt about Halloween Kills. But the poster is just perfect. It's mysterious. It's dark. It has, big, bright orange pumpkin on it, and Michael Myers' iconic knife right there. It's my favorite movie poster of all time.
Yeah, and also just the whole thing with the pumpkin. Like, Halloween is notorious known for the pumpkin, like the beginning of the movie with the pumpkin and then the candle. And just like the artwork, I love the artwork of the hand. It's Michael Myers' hand, especially with the veins coming out because he's gripping it very hard.
Very tight. Yep.
Yeah, I love Halloween. Halloween's one of my favorite movies as well. As like I said, I grew up on horror movies. But for mine, I have to go with my second favorite movie of all time, man. I gotta go with the great movie Big Trouble in Little China. Like, how can you not love this movie?
Yeah. No, I get it. It screams like 80s graphics and illustrations, and it's pretty awesome.
The funny thing is, when I was looking up this movie for my poster just to get the image so I can show it for our viewers on YouTube. By the way, you can watch us on YouTube. We'll post as well with our audio version. But I was looking at the updated versions, and I'm like, nah, the hell with that. I want the 1980s version.
Yep.
I want it's reeks 80s. It shows what I think is Jack Burton is bigger than everybody with his ego and his personality in the movie. It has Kim Cattrall down there. It has Lohan in the corner, and it has the uh, guy, the lightning guy on the right, the gangs in the bottom. It's got the part when they're in the sewer. Like it just has everything in the poster. And it's something that like I think is awesome. I actually had this posted up on my wall somewhere. So that's my my favorite movie poster.
No, that's awesome. That's a fantastic poster. Like it just reeks 80s. It reminds me of, not because of like anything other than the illustration and the colors, but the original theatrical poster for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Like big Indiana head, and then what is it, Kate Jones? Like
Kate Upshaw.
Kate Upshaw, sorry, Kate Upshaw, Steven Spielberg's wife, right? Um, in the corner, and Short Round in his Yankees hat. Like
Yes.
and also my favorite Indiana Jones movie. So
Yeah, it's I would say I really like The Last Crusade. I think that's a good one because of Sean Connery as the dad.
I think
But
before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out,
mhm.
Temple of Doom was kind of like people's least favorite Indiana Jones movie, but it was always my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Well, it's got the part 2 of the Galima.
Yeah.
I used to know this person that was terrified of that line, so we used to tell her that, and she just gets terrified.
Oh,
Yeah, so we gave our movie posters. Now, this is a good question that Svo actually put to me. Since we love movies, but what movie do you put on when you're under the weather, or you kind of feel out of it? How about you start us off, Svo?
yeah. So there's two movies that jump right off the bat to me, and they have nothing to do with my top 10 favorite movies of all time. These movies just put me in a different mood when I watch them. And the first is Jon Favreau in Chef. It cheers me up. It makes me feel better. It comforts me. And the second movie, because it makes me laugh like considerably, is Forgetting Sarah Marshall with Jason Segel. Jason Segal, however you say it.
Segel.
Forgetting Sarah
Tomato.
Marshall is probably my favorite movie to come out of that Jason Segel, Seth Rogen era. Like Superbad's up there too, but for some reason, Forgetting Sarah Marshall just cracks me the hell up. From the beginning of the movie when he's sleeping or watching TV and he knows that Sarah Marshall's coming and he gets up and he starts cleaning. He takes a shower and he comes out and he starts shaking.
I got something for you.
I've got something for you. And then the Dracula puppets and his time in Hawaii. Are those sad tissues or happy tissues? Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Chef always put me in a better mood when I'm sick or down or sad. It just does it for me.
Yeah, I really liked Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Chef just makes me hungry. Also, I actually really got into the Netflix series on that Chef.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I really like it. And Jon Favreau, he's so underrated in everything he does. He's really like puts determination and like really respects craft of whatever he's doing. Also, he's doing the new Star Wars series for The Mandalorian and for Book of Boba Fett, and I think he's doing a good job writing them. But I do have a Jason Segel movie. I have two of them as well, but it isn't Forgetting Sarah Marshall. My movie that I like to put on when I'm kind of under the weather or whatnot is I Love You Man with Paul Rudd.
Oh,
and it's
sorry,
to me it's hilarious.
The Chiefs just walked it off.
Damn it!
But continue your story about I Love You Man. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
It's okay. It's just bad news. I need to watch I Love You Man. But I Love You Man just for the chemistry between him and Paul Rudd. The fact that Paul Rudd's a guy looking for friends for his wedding party, and just the stuff they do. And then it has the Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk in there. Just that whole like comedy is just great. And Paul Rudd's great too. Go ahead.
There's dialogue in that movie that even after watching it 100 times, like cracks me up. Like when they're at the open house and he meets Jason Segel for the first time, he's like, I like it, but I don't love it. He's like, yeah, and it totally smells like fart.
Oh, yeah, that guy's
Before that,
totally crop
he's
dusting.
totally crop dusting. He goes, wait for it. He goes, boom. That's a fart, motherfucker.
Yeah, yeah, that part of cracks me up. The part where he's like, I slap at the base. Wait, why you say it like that? Oh, I slap at the base.
Slap in the face, man. I got you
Yeah.
stored in my iPhone, Jobin.
Yeah, Jobin. Or the part
Jobin.
where with the billboards, where he's like, I'm looking for a realtor. Who could it be? It's like me, motherfucker.
Peter Clavin,
Yeah,
licensed real estate broker.
that movie is like has so many great like visuals and like lines. But my second one is The Fifth Element. Really a big fan of Gary Oldman, Bruce Willis. Love Chris Tucker. It has everything from sci-fi to romance to comedy and action. It's a movie that you can really get into, enjoy just the visuals of it. I love the color schemes that are put in the movie. I love the soundtrack. Just everything about it kind of makes me happy and just like crack up, especially like just the weird stuff of the future. It's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like a updated comedy Blade Runner, if you think
Can
about it.
I confess something completely here?
Go ahead.
The weekend that The Fifth Element was supposed to come out, I kind of got into some trouble at school. And we had plans to go to the theater to see it. It was me and all my buddies. And I snuck out of the house to go to a football game. And I got caught. So my old man wouldn't let me go to see The Fifth Element. And it has escaped me ever since. And I still haven't seen it.
What? Dude, you should watch that tomorrow after you're done playing video games in your underwear. That movie is so
you know what? I'm going to make you this promise. I can't say I'll do it tomorrow because I got to hang out with the wife a little bit. But by the next time we record, I will have seen The Fifth Element.
Ooh, I will. Swell will give a review on The Fifth Element.
I will have turned my phone off. I will watch The Fifth Element, and I will then follow up on why it makes you feel better. But it's also like everyone's got that one movie. Like I think that like you always have meant to see that you haven't for some reason or another. Like it's eluded you or it just got away from you. And The Fifth Element is mine. I have never seen it.
I'm trying to think what movie has done that to me.
For the longest time for my dad, that movie was Spaceballs. Because every time he rented it, like the VCR wasn't working, or probably because I was doing dumb shit, like I think I put a grilled cheese in the VCR once. Just like I was a kid and like I was just experimenting with what could go in the VCR. I remember, like, I grew up with a single dad that worked his ass off, and he's been at the same job since the day he got out of high school, right? He worked his ass off, and he paid like $500 for this VCR at one point. And there's me, this like 7-year-old asshole, figuring out if a grilled cheese could fit in the VCR.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So we never got to watch Spaceballs till much later on in life.
Yeah, I've seen Spaceballs. It's an okay movie. I like Mel Brooks, but I like the Blazing Saddles a little bit better.
Blazing Saddles and like Bride of Frankenstein more.
Yeah, Young Frankenstein. I love.
Yeah.
History of the World. That's another great movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man, but you gotta get on that Fifth Element. Like
I promise you, when we record our next pod, before we go into what we're going to talk about, and we'll talk about that here in probably about 30 seconds. I will have a 2-minute review of The Fifth Element before we record our next pod.
Nice.
Oh man.
I'm sorry. I'm still laughing about the grilled cheese.
I was an idiot. I was like 6 or 7. I was an idiot. I still am, but like for different reasons now than when I was 7, you know?
Nah, it's just innocent kid stuff. But with that, we're gonna start putting a bow on this thing. So now that you learned about me and Swole, we want to know about you. So using the hashtags getting to know you, hashtag Yumper and Swole, or hashtag Tainted Glove. And you can tweet us at the Tainted Glove on Twitter, at Tainted Glove on Twitter. or actually you can comment on the YouTube video that will be posted at the Tainted Club on YouTube. Svo, do you want to have anything to close us out?
No, I'm really, really excited to do this pod with you. Like, you become a good friend in a short amount of time for someone that we've never actually physically hung out in the same room before. We're gonna change that though next Sunday when we get a burger together, right?
Yep.
I'm really excited to kind of have a creative outlet to talk about movies, and maybe some TV shows. Who knows? Like, but I think our primary focus is going to be on movies with the occasional sports viewing and whatever else like chimed in there.
Tomfoolery.
But we definitely want to hear from you. So like we said before, use those hashtags, hashtag getting to know you, hashtag Yumper and Svo, and hashtag Tainted Glove. And tell us what your favorite movies are. Tell us what movies you watch when you're feeling sick, and tell us why, because we kind of want to know a little bit more about who's watching this. We know who our primary audience is going to be and who this is going to go out to, but we want to learn more about our followers. So
yeah,
let's hear from you.
So before I get to my closing, I actually want to give a little sneak peek about what we have coming up. So as you know, movies have had impact on our lives. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, it had some effect on yours. Movies also have an impact on the culture of the times, and as cultures progress and develop and evolve. So me and Svo have decided that why don't we look into a particular genre that has impacted the culture of their time? Let's look into teen movies. And what better place to start off with than the teen movies of the 1980s and do a deep dive on those classic movies and see how they impacted that time. And then we'll progress to the 90s, then to the 2000s, and then we'll top it off with a special episode, but I don't want to reveal that yet. And for that, I want to give a thank you to you guys. I can put it best by a quote by the great Burt Reynolds in the movie Without a Paddle. You can lose your money, you can spend all of it and work hard and get it all back. But if you waste your time, you're never going to get it back. So with that, thank you so much for giving us your time. Have a good night. Have a good day whenever you listen to this. Be sure to check us out on our Twitter and our YouTube, and we'll see you again. Peace.
Thank you for listening to Yumper and Svo at the Show podcast, a Tainted Glove production.
That's it. I'm getting out of here.